Commissioner Barry O'Farrell, it's a great pleasure to have you with us on CUTS Adda. This is a program that CUTS has been running, in which where we have discussions with prominent persons like yourself, diplomats, persons who are engaged in multilateral trade negotiations, in plurilateral matters, and of course, on the bilateral space. And let me start by wishing you and your family a very happy New Year.
Thank you.
High Commissioner, it'll soon be about a year that you've been in office in New Delhi. And 2020 has been professionally challenging for many people because of health protocols, social distancing and travel restrictions. And yet, in 2020, India and Australia managed to achieve significant amount of togetherness, so to speak, and add value to the robust strategic partnership. When you look back at 2020, what would you like to identify as some of the critical pillars that were put in place in the relationship?
It has been, by any measure, an interesting year, particularly for me. You know that I'm not a trained diplomat. You know I came from a different part of the world of employment. And so what I expected to be my first, hopefully gentle introduction to the world of diplomacy was blown up a bit, as was the world for everybody, by COVID. But I'm pleased to say that despite that, as I look back, the team I've led here in India has done a remarkable job in ensuring that despite the challenges of COVID-19, the relationship after 12 months is much better, deeper and broader than when I arrived. And that's in no small part due to the fact that on the 4th of June, our two Prime Ministers, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Morrison, elevated the relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. And that agreement was matched by 8 other agreements that range from defence through education, through water resources, to cyber and critical technologies. And so I'm delighted that what we've seen over the past 12 months is that deepening of relationship, an indication that it reflects the strong commitment that exists between Australia and India to cooperate globally, firstly in confronting the challenge of COVID-19, but also in seeking to ensure greater cooperation on a common view for the Indo-Pacific post-COVID, and of course to try and ensure that we realise the economic promise of the relationship that exists between us. And so I couldn't be happier with what has happened to the Australia-India relationship over this 12 months, despite the terrible pandemic that's affected both our countries, that we're both still dealing with and that the world is dealing with. Happily, 6 months on from that Prime Minister's Virtual Leaders Summit, we're making good progress. We've held a special round of the Australia-India Strategic Research Fund, specifically focused on COVID-19. Next month, we'll be holding a hackathon focused on the circular economy for students and startups, medium and small size enterprises from both countries. We recently launched a new grants program focused on cyber and critical technologies that are open to Australian and Indian companies, students and research institutions. And of course, we continue to cooperate closely on space, supply chains and energy matters. So whichever way I cut it, whichever way I look at it, I think the past 12 months has seen an elevation in the relationship. And as I say, I pay tribute to the team here. I pay tribute to the MEA, without whom it couldn't have existed. And of course, to the vision and foresight and camaraderie that exists between our Prime Ministers.
Thank you, High Commissioner. While you do very humbly say that you've not been a professional diplomat, you're no stranger to India. And even during your period as the Premier of New South Wales, you had a deep and abiding interest in India. And subsequent to that as well, you maintained, you consolidated, and you kept up your reading, your connects with India. How do you look at 2021? And I'm not talking about the pandemic so much, but what would you see as the pillars that you'd like to put into place to take forward what you've consolidated in 2020?
Well, Ahmed, as you know, there are a few things new in the world, and as you know, the world has a habit of cycles and things coming up again. And I find myself approaching this year where I was when I first visited India in 2010, and to quote that Bill Clinton election strategy line, it's all about the economy, stupid. And I'm not being rude to my host. I think all of us, having hopefully found vaccines that will put an end to COVID-19, are now focused on the bigger challenge, which of course is the economic challenge, the challenge that addresses the livelihoods of our citizens, that addresses the future of our countries, the opportunities available to those people who live in our countries, and of course the living standards to which they can aspire to. And so I think that 2021 will be clearly a period to continue the strong momentum across the relationship, whether it's defence through to public administration and vocational education, but particularly critical in relation to deepening trade and investment ties. And as you know, as a former ambassador, that is the bread and butter of relationships, but it's also perhaps the hardest part of most relationships. I'm pleased to see, and I'm encouraged by some of the strong signs pointing to rapid economic recovery by both our countries. But there's a long way to go to ensure the certainty that both our governments but also what that our citizens should expect. Prior to COVID, we'd seen a doubling over the past 5 years in two-way trade between our two nations. And that's a good thing, but it simply provides a basis upon which we need to do more. The good news is that one of the comprehensive strategic partnership signed by our prime ministers commits us to re-engaging on the comprehensive economic cooperation agreement between Australia and India. You know, in an earlier iteration, we embarked on a similar exercise, but for a variety of reasons, it stalled. I think it's a good thing that during this time, building on the disruption that the world faced throughout the last 12 months, that economies like Australia and India recognise the need to kickstart trade and investment ties, not just with Australia, but with other countries, and that's happening. There are green shoots, if I can use that economist's expression. One of the agreements that we signed relates to critical minerals and rare earths. We know that India has a mission to become a significant manufacturer, if not the leading manufacturer in the world of electric vehicles, equally in relation to battery storage for renewable energies. Both of those industries will require critical minerals and rare earths. Happily, Australia is a country in which those materials exist. It's a reliable and trusted friend of India, which is able to supply those elements to grow India's own economic regeneration. And so that's one of the areas where I'm very positive. Indo-Australian cooperation will also include the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative, which will become important enablers of whether critical minerals trade or other trade. The biggest lesson, I think, or the two big lessons I think we've learned through the COVID year, both for our economies and economies around the world, is the importance of reliable supply chains, and secondly, and perhaps even firstly, the importance of trustworthy friends. So it will be about the economy, and in that sense, I'm glad that one of your former colleagues, Anil Vadva, working with the CII, has produced the Australian Economic Strategy, which was released in early December. I think that's an important and timely contribution to the way in which we can deepen our economic relationship, and it builds on the work of one of my predecessors, Peter Varghese, who delivered for the Australian government a similar report, the Indian Economic Strategy, back in 2018. So I have to say that I agree with Ambassador Vadva's comments that both India and Australia stand to benefit from boosting bilateral economic engagement, and that in particular from reinvigorating the business-to-business relationship between our countries. You know, Australia has been a trading nation since Europeans first settled it. And the Australian approach to trade is that it's only a good deal if both sides benefit. And I think because of the complementarities, as you guys say in diplomacy, that Australia offers to India, we can assist India seek its self-reliant India policy. We can assist India in its mission to grow its own economy by reliably providing elements that can be used to build that industry. And that's what I'm looking forward to this year.
Let me say it's been a great pleasure speaking with you. I wish you and your family a wonderful stay in India, and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Arvind, and happy New Year to all of your family, but also more importantly, those of the think tank.
Thank you.